Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of SUGTalks. I'm Craig Dale, your host, and together with our special guests we'll take a deep dive into the topics, challenges and opportunities facing SAP users today. Please do make sure you subscribe so you never miss another episode. I'm delighted to be joined again today by Conor Riordan, EMEA Customer Service Director at Pfizer and also Vice Chair of UKISUG. And today we're going to be taking a look back at some of the outcomes of the Executive Forum that happened yesterday of our Connect conference, as well as taking some time to introduce you to Conor, who recently took on the role of Vice Chair of the UKISUG board. And as we're at our Connect conference, we're actually doing this in person. So welcome, Conor.
Thanks, Craig, and it's great to be here today.
And it's absolutely great to be in the same room rather than online, so
Exactly.
Welcome. And whilst we're here, obviously, and by the way, my voice is not just due to SUGFest, but we had our SUGFest networking event last night at the event, so I just thought I'd kick off and say, what was your favourite part of SUGFest last night?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there was two. I think the great thing about SUGFest is people just getting together and connecting and being able to walk around and meet so many different people and have conversations. I think that's the first, real part of it. The real fun part for me last night was Dragioki. I think it was just such a laugh, and it was great to see so many people up there singing and crowd participation, and yeah, there was a great gravitation towards the Dragioki section for a good few hours yesterday evening. So that definitely was the highlight for me.
Oh, fantastic. I'd probably concur with that, but I'll also bring in one of my favourites most years, and that's Comedy Club. Comedy Club was, I thought, hilarious.
Yeah, Comedy Club was outstanding too.
Brutal at times,
yes,
but absolutely hilarious. And we always do have a warning on there, if easily offended, please do not come in.
Exactly.
So that was good. But thanks for that, Conor. And, just going back now and looking back a bit about yourself, you've been a member of, obviously, the UKISUG group for quite a while now, probably over a decade or more.
Yeah.
And have recently taken on the role of Vice Chair. So just for the benefit of those members that perhaps haven't met you before, would you like to just start off by sharing a little bit of background about yourself and your SAP experience?
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, so I've been working in the SAP space for about 25 years. So my initial introduction to SAP was in 1998. I was working for a pharmaceutical company called Elan back in Ireland. And we started the process of part of Y2K, which was huge at that time. A lot of companies were putting in SAP as a Y2K mitigation. And so I started that project. I initially came from the business. I was a quality manager, and I went on the project team as the quality lead, designing the quality process. And then eventually I took over as project manager. And then when I completed that project, I was asked to do the next project. And the next project was in the US. It was in Florida, and I went over there and for 6 months doing a deployment. And then I just did the next one, and I just kept going. So I actually never got back to my day job for having started the SAP. And it was quite common back in those times. Mm-hmm. A lot of the people that went on SAP projects came from the business, came in as business leads, and then subsequently stayed on the program. So I've been in this role a long time through a lot of different companies. I've done consulting. In the UK here, I was consulting in Boots for a while, in B&Q down in Southampton. And then I joined Pfizer back in 2006. So I've been with them now 17 years, and I managed their European rollout of SAP across the manufacturing division. And then towards the latter phases, I was managing their business process improvement in commercial operations. And then about 18 months ago, I did a career move, and I actually moved back into the business, and I'm now heading up customer service for Europe for Pfizer. So it's an interesting transition to be at the other side of operations and looking at what the business want out of SAP versus what I historically in IT wanted, which was predominantly delivering projects. My role now is predominantly getting value out of the asset and making sure, we're basically driving process standardization, driving automation, and making sure the user experience is the best experience to make it as easy as possible to get work done.
Oh, fantastic. So kind of almost full circle, if you like.
Yeah, almost full. Yeah, so I started
side.
the business 18, 20 years doing SAP projects and now back in the business again.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so obviously 17 years Pfizer. And so quick question about your user group participation. And so what made you join the user group initially?
Yeah, so actually it was quite interesting. Back around 2000, I originally joined, we had an Ireland user group that was run by SAP. Actually, Fiona Walsh
Yep. Worked with Fiona.
set that up. And we had a number of companies that were all in the same boat. We were all Y2K. We were all putting in SAP. And we were all just learning from each other because it was like new technology, the ASAP methodology was just being brought out. And so we were all trying to figure out how to do this. And so that was the first real learning. Our first community was around learning from each other. And then eventually that died away. And then around 2007 and 8, I got involved in the UKI user group. And so my motivation was exactly the same. It was, I had left consultancy, I just joined Pfizer, and I was trying to understand what are other companies doing. So I could see what we were doing, but it was like, what is everybody else doing? So that's why I kind of reached out back to the user group to get in and understand and connect with people to share maybe our challenges, but also learn from other people in terms of how they were addressing and what innovations they were bringing. So, yeah, I think 2008, maybe 2009, I think my first conference was in Manchester.
Yes, indeed.
I remember we were in Old Trafford, which is a bit tough for a Liverpool supporter, but I still went. And I remember getting the bus there. I don't remember getting the bus back, if I remember that night. But anyway, it was very successful. Very successful conference. And since then, I've been coming every year since. And I think here, just in Birmingham, absolutely fantastic facility. I think it's. I was talking to one of the colleagues yesterday, saying, "Do you think we'll ever leave?" And they said, "Well, why? It just works so well. It's a great venue, great people. So it's really successful."
Oh, fantastic! Remember Fiona Walsh, worked with Fiona when we kind of created the island group. Because it had fallen by the wayside, and Fiona was very passionate about getting customers together and help support me and the team in creating that. So that's excellent.
It was actually great to see Fiona here this week. I hadn't seen Fiona in years, and it's just another feature of the conference. You just get to meet people that you haven't seen in so long. So, yeah, Fiona was here this week. So it's great.
Fantastic. And I think if I remember rightly, 2009 conference was at Chris Akabusi.
It was Chris Akabusi, absolutely, yeah. That was a great conference.
What a great guy he was, what a compare.
Yeah.
Okay, so just moving back to, obviously you talked a lot there about the networking side and learning from other customers and understanding what they were doing on their journeys and how you could feed into that and also learn from that. What benefits do you think you've got it from professional basis and also personal?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I would probably say there's probably three things. I mean, the first one is about community, and I think there's something great about giving back, And it was interesting at a keynote on Sunday evening. There was a question asked to the audience, like, who has helped someone, in the last 6 months. And then they were asked, like, who felt good afterwards? And everyone put up their hand and said, so everyone that gives something feels good about it. And so there's a real sense of when you invest in something, there's actually a great personal gain. Because you actually feel really, really good from doing it. So that's the first thing, giving back. I think at the personal level then, from a professional development viewpoint, I think for me, certainly joining the board, it's probably given me exposure to stuff that I wouldn't be used to in terms of my day-to-day job. Mm-hmm. So I think, last year we worked on the strategy and the communication plan and the marketing plan. I mean, that's stuff I just wouldn't. I'd never get exposure to. Also getting, connected up with the SAP user awards. And so you just, there's just an exposure and there's a learning. And then finally, just the networking. You know, I just get to meet more people. And, you know, the key about networking is not that you know someone, it's that you can offer support to other people, and also you'll get support back. Like, so, I get to build my professional network, which is really important. And, that's been really, really good.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I suppose that cycle of give and take.
Yeah.
And, you know, we often say when we run these things, you know, the more you put in, the more you will actually get out. And, you know, you said that earlier, that about, you know, how many of you have helped people, and how good did you feel about that?
Yeah.
And that's excellent.
Yeah. And it's actually one of the great things about coming here and speaking. I remember in the early years I'd come and I'd do a session, and at one level you're sharing your experiences, but then so many people connect with you afterwards sharing theirs. And it's surprising how much you learn from them sharing their experiences, good and bad. So, you know, even speaking at a conference, there's great benefit, but it's also great from just making connections, getting feedback. You know, so it's really, really great. Like, and more people should, you know, should speak at our conferences. Yeah.
I concur with that one, Conor.
Yeah.
Definitely. And just on that, so obviously you joined the group, you engaged, you've then worked with kind of the island special interest group and part of the committee, and then you joined the board of the user group, and then put yourself forward as vice chair this year. What made you make that decision?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. So I've been on the board now 2.5 years, and, you know, I suppose for me, I would kind of say we're kind of in a transition phase. You know, we're moving from, let's say, the old world of ECC, where companies have been on the platform 20-25 years, and we're moving to a new world of S4, where in a lot of cases our technology is going to the cloud, and what we remain with is with platforms and business processes. And so there's a transition happening. And I suppose as I was looking at this, I was trying to say, okay, you know, what could I do, or what could I help as part of that transition? And in my own personal career, I'm also in transition. So I've moved from IT into the business. And so I just have a different line of sight now that I have to have as part of my business role in terms of what I expect out of SAP. And I think as we go through this journey over the next 2 years to 3 years, you know, I genuinely think that our conference in 3 years' time, when we look at the agenda and we look at the speakers and we look at the streams, is probably going to be substantially different than what it is today. Because most companies will have done the S4 move. You know, we won't be talking about cloud and testing tools and technology and re-platforming. We'd probably be talking about business value, business outcomes, and how are we maximizing the return on investment on our platforms. So that's going to be a change, and I think for me that's maybe something that I think I can, you know, play a part in terms of managing that transition and supporting you and your team as part of that process.
Thank you. And that kind of brings me to the next question I had in mind around your kind of goals and aspirations as being vice chair, and then, you know, hopefully moving on to being chair of the user group in the future. What is that kind of one of the main targets that you have?
I think so. I mean, obviously it's really important. I mean, we are a user group, so, you know, making sure the goals and objectives of the users are also met is really important. So it's understanding what our community is saying, understanding where our community is going, and then helping with that transition and with that change. So for me, I think it is going to be around trying to maybe steer us towards that business value, business outcomes, line of business is probably the journey that we will go on. But again, we'll get that cue from our members also.
Hope so. There we go then. Challenge
Yeah.
for 2023.
Challenge for 2023.
Let's get on that.
Yeah.
And thanks for that, Conor. I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us there, and obviously your background too. And just now circling back to Connect conference, and yesterday we had the Executive Forum running, and I just thought it'd be nice to hear about some of the key discussions that took place there. So what were the topics being discussed at the forum?
Yeah, we had a great forum yesterday. So traditionally we would have had a sit-down lunch where, we'd have executives coming in. We'd probably have spoken for an hour and a half over lunch. This year we kind of did it slightly different, where we had lunch beforehand, kind of informal, and then we met for 2.5 hours in a formal setting. We had two key topics that were up for discussion. One was RISE and one was Signavio. And it was interesting because they're two ends of the spectrum. While Signavio in theory is a tool, Signavio is all about business value and business outcomes. So we had a great discussion on that, and then we had a great discussion on RISE, which is all about technology, wires and boxes, cloud, So it was interesting in the room. We had a mix of business leaders and we had a mix of technology leaders. And it was interesting to see how the two topics resonated with two different stakeholder groups. So the Signavio one was quite interesting because what we could see with Signavio is that, from a tool perspective, the executive team could see tremendous value. I have some notes here from yesterday. Seeing reality, really exciting, very useful, very powerful. So the words coming back was this technology helping us to understand our business processes is, really exciting. There was a general discussion probably in terms of how SAP are marketing it, because it's probably, we use in Pfizer, we use a similar product called Celonis. And, I won't say it's a money printing machine, but basically these tools, they show you where the savings are. And so once you start deploying them and start using them, it's actually return on investment is very, very quick, because when you've got your data in these tools, you see your inefficiencies really quickly. And part of the discussion back to SAP is maybe rather than trying to sell us tools where we don't understand the outcomes, maybe partner with us differently in terms of, doing proof of concepts or showing us the value. Because once you show it, once you see it, there's no going back. So maybe it was a message to SAP about how they engage with us, not just trying to sell us another technology, but actually demonstrate a capability where the evidence of doing a proof of concept will be so overwhelming, which it probably will be, that you'll go, actually, I need this. Mm-hmm. This is we need this, and I think that's where these tools like Signavio and other products are really, really, really powerful. So I think there was a general feedback that there's certainly a major role to play on the Signavio side. When it came to RISE, it was really interesting because I think a lot of people, when you talk to RISE, do people understand it? Yes and no. We all kind of know at a macro level what RISE is, but I think what became apparent from the discussion yesterday is that RISE is very much it's a bespoke solution between you and SAP, and it's unique to every customer. And in order to understand RISE for your company, there is no brochure out there, or there is no PowerPoint that's going to explain it to you. The only way of understanding RISE with your company is to engage with SAP and sit down and go through the process. Because depending on where you're at with your platform, you have some companies going RISE ECC to ECC, more are going from ECC to S4. More of them have already existing hyperscalers. So it really is a matrix of options and combinations. And so a RISE, there was certain customers yesterday shared what they do in RISE, and they were all different. Yeah. And so that's the thing. It's a suite of capabilities that will differ from each customer. I think what was interesting in listening to Michiel, and I think it was really powerful too, is that when a company embarks with Rise, the engagement with SAP changes. It's not an annual let's renew licenses and sell licenses. It becomes a much more engaged process because now SAP are owning the relationship. One of the key things McKee was talking about was, his people are now compensated based on Net Promoter Score. So how happy the customer is a really, really important factor in that determination of compensation. And therefore, in order for a customer to be happy, turning up once a year doesn't kind of tick the box. So with these RISE contracts, and now that SAP are taken front and center in terms of the engagement model, that it is all about changing the engagement between SAP and the customer. Mm-hmm. So at one level, at the back end, you've got all this technology changing, and there was a lot of discussion around costs, and I think the message is, there probably isn't any major cost savings going to Rise, but what you are getting is a different proposition from SAP. You're getting a different level of engagement. You're getting a maybe a higher return in terms of business output and business outcomes. So it was an interesting discussion. Obviously, for a lot of customers, like the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Like, so you got to go through it. I think the feeling going away was that the message from SAP was a good message in terms of what they're trying to do. There was 3 key words that kept coming up was trust, skills, and value. So trust in that there needs to be trust both ways. We need to trust SAP, they need to trust us. Part of that trust discussion was even around we as customers sharing all our IT costs with SAP so that they understand what is our cost today. So as they put together a RISE proposition, they're doing it understanding our current cost basis. Often you don't show your cost to somebody because you're trying to figure, you're trying to see what best cost model you can get. But so that was part of the trust discussion. And then obviously, value, what outcomes are we going to get here? And so it was interesting listening to some of the customers that have gone to Rise. A lot of the softer value on things like, security, cyber security, not being so dependent on internal skills anymore. That some clients have multiple instances of SAP on multiple different platforms and multiple different levels, and so you hand this over to a RISE contract where that's all taken care of. You don't have to worry about it so much. So there's softer benefits over just a total TCO, and that's a hard sell because when you're as digital folks back in the old days, in my days, when you're bringing these things for approval, business approval, like their first thing's going to be asked is, where's the savings? So, it's a tricky one. But overall, it was a great discussion. We had some great interaction, and I think a testament to how well the discussion was we said, okay, we started talking about what we're going to do next year, and it was like, why are we waiting until next year? When are we meeting again to discuss this stuff? So the general consensus was we can't wait till next year's conference to do this again. They want more frequent engagement. So that's a great result from yesterday's meeting.
Brilliant. So, well, I'm not sure whether I'm happy to be recording this podcast or not. That's my second task then. So organise more executive forums as well as getting the line of business stuff. Thanks, Conor.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
So, but just going back on that, and quite interesting that conversation, and trust is a big point in all of this. And as you know, we've worked with SAP on building that trusted relationship between SAP and the customer and how that works. And we will have a customer charter coming out in the next month or so, which comes from that work we've done, and also the fact of the salespeople being remunerated from the NPS score rather than just the revenue generated. So that points to me to that relationship element. And just going back to what you said about Signavio, shows the value, and then we won't be able to not buy it, if you like. Is that also similar to Rise with it? Because I think you mentioned there that, it's bespoke to a customer.
Yeah.
So is it needed that you have that solid relationship with SAP, that you are willing to be open with them, and they're also open with you to get the best solution? And do they need to then demonstrate, okay, for your business, this is where the value will be, this is the proposition?
Yeah, I think so. I think, McKeel said it a number of times yesterday, if you're going into Rise to save cost, then you're not going to do Rise. It's a simple message, because it's not about cost saving. You're doing it for other reasons, and you're doing it, you're doing it for security, you're doing it for scalability, you're doing it for skills management, hopefully doing it for getting other value out of the proposition, and you're doing it to get a closer relationship with SAP. So you're going back to that value piece, which I think is where kind of Signavio comes in, maybe at the back end. While you don't need to do Rise to do Signavio, Signavio is part of your Rise contract. So it's kind of it's just a new way of working. And maybe in the early days it was sold as like saving cost, and we all think of moving to the cloud as trying to save costs and whatever, but I don't think that's the focus at the moment. So it's all around trying to drive value, and some of that value for Rise is intangible. I think with Signavio it's easier to sell because you can see the tangible. It's very apparent. Where you can look at like manual work within your process. You can look at lead times. You can do benchmark between different companies, and you can also do benchmarking with the industry. So you can see with that how you're comparing to other competitors within your space on key metrics, and the value you can get if you can close that gap between your competitors and yourself. So, I think for our business leaders that were at yesterday's meeting, Signavio was kind of getting them really excited, because for them it was like, okay, we need to save money, and it would switch into conversation, maybe rather than having to save money on infrastructure, we need to save money on process, and that's the kind of conversation you want, So there's money to be got in the business through running better business processes. That's where the value is. There's probably incremental value in terms of the technology, but it's probably not as great as what people think, but certainly looking at the process, there's definitely unlocked value in there.
Oh, thank you. So sounds like a great discussion, and thanks for sharing that with us. And for our listeners interested in delving a bit more into Signavio, and obviously what Conor mentioned there about Signavio forming Rise, part of the Rise offering. There's more detail in that in a podcast released in November where we discuss Signavio with Vasilios Lolas. So please do listen to that one to get a bit more information on Signavio. So, Conor, thank you very much for that. And just coming towards the end of our discussion now, what do you think are the potential biggest challenges organisations and our members are going to face in 2023?
I think for a lot of, just from my own company, we are starting our S4 journey. We're a single instance SAP system. We've had it running 25 years. It's a huge migration. And so as we look at it, the question is, do you innovate and migrate, or do you just migrate? And so given the scale and the business risk involved, it is the latter. It is, we're going to migrate first and then we're going to innovate. And so I think for a lot of companies that have been on ECC for a long time, that have years and years of bespoke development and code and acquisitions and divestitures, it's trying to find a balance between how do you do a risk-free S4 migration versus doing innovation at the same time. And I think when you go to your CFO looking for money to do an S4 migration, he's obviously going to be looking for some sort of return.
Yeah.
And that return puts a risk on the migration, because if you're trying to drive innovation as well as do the migration, it becomes really complex. So I think finding that balance between migrating safely, risk-free, keeping the business going, keeping the lights on, and then innovating while at the same time trying to keep the business happy with some level of new functionality and return on investment. I think that's where it's going to be a challenge for a lot of companies to try and make those decisions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Conor, for being with us today. It was great to actually record this in the room with you.
Yeah,
thank you
excellent,
very much. And, thank you for your time and your insights. And, we hope you enjoyed our conversation and found it valuable. I'm off now to get coffee and some throat lozenges. And until the next time, stay safe, stay well, and keep washing your hands.